and thanks for coming back to Guam.
Happy Liberation Day, my fellow Guamanians. I'm going to tell you a story about the last war on Guam, the freedom I cherish, the America I grew up to love, and a real-life treasure chest full of gold, rubies, diamonds, emeralds, and other jewels and American currency from the 1940s that has never been found. I never lived through a war and never want to, but my grandmother did. She and my grandfather, who also was a young man during the Japanese Imperial Army's occupation of Guam, reared me. They are the reason I understand the Chamorro language. Grandpa was from Agana, Grandma from Merizo. If you know about the occupation, then you know the Japanese soldiers were particularly brutal to Merizo residents, and that Merizo was liberated from the soldiers before any other place on Guam by brave Chamorro men who had enough of their enslavement. I know this and much of what I know about Guam history during the occupation, not from my grandparents, but from history books. Grandma and Grandpa did not talk much about the war. In fact, Grandma never told me that her father, Tomas Espinosa Cruz, and her two brothers, Tomas Anderson Cruz and Jesus Cruz Anderson, were among the few who survived the Tinta Cave massacre. I learned this fact when reading their names among the list of survivors on a Tinta Cave massacre memorial program booklet. Grandma did tell me one story though. As the Japanese soldiers were thrashing Merizo, her father took her, and only her, his favorite child, from their home in Merizo up the hills behind the house and far into the jungle. They fled with a chest full of gold, gemstones, American money. She said that if the soldiers had found the treasure in my great-grandpa's office across the house, they would have executed the entire family, including my great-grandma from Sumay, Margarita Anderson Cruz, and her 16 children and numerous grandchildren. I asked her the first time she told me the story why her father had so much treasure. She told me he was a businessman and also a goldsmith. So they ran through the jungles, each carrying one side of the treasure chest. And something alarmed them, so they stopped, they hid. And when they were certain the risk of danger subsided, they buried the treasure chest. It was the one story she told me about the war, and she told it a number of times to me. My sister Tammy said she remembers Grandma telling her this story as well. I always wondered about that treasure chest and whether the story was true. Grandma said that after the war, she and her father and brothers went to look for it, but never found it. 4 years ago, I told the story to my Uncle Ed, who is the son of my grandma's younger brother, Uncle Francisco Cruz. He knew exactly what I was talking about and even gave context to the story. My great-grandfather was injured during the Tinta Cave massacre and needed medical aid. He had a girlfriend in Inalahan who was a nurse. That was where he was headed with my grandmother, when they left the house with the treasure chest. Somewhere buried beneath the ground, between the central part of Merizo and wherever great-grandpa's Chapmac's home in Inalahan was, is a chest full of treasure from World War II. The story, I suppose, tends to romanticize the brutal occupation that cost the lives and limbs of so many of our people, American Marines and soldiers and Japanese occupiers. But I think this was the reason it was the only story my grandma would tell about the war. It literally is a diamond and more in the rough. The Tinta Cave massacre occurred on July 15, 1944, which means that around this time, 79 years ago, my grandma and her dad made that flee through southern mountains and valleys. Scattered around that trek were the cries of a peaceful people yearning for freedom and the corpses of Chamorros caught in the middle of a battle between imperialism and the fight to end aggression. Contrary to the cacophony of separatist voices claiming a grand conspiracy of colonialism these days on our island, my grandparents loved America. They loved the military and especially the Marine Corps. They were grateful for freedom from slavery and annihilation. And with all due respect to those separatist voices, they never endured what my grandma, her family, and all the Chamorros went through and died for during that war. Their voices are what matter because they speak to us from the grave about a commemoration of their suffering so that we should not struggle through what they did. They didn't agree with everything the military did, and they were frustrated about how long it took to be welcomed into the American family. It is something we struggle with to this day as we remain an unincorporated territory of the United States. But they knew, because of what they went through, that in the absence of good, that space will be filled by evil. That in the absence of America, a nation with far less virtue, one rooted in a recognition of the, unrooted in a recognition of the inalienable rights of mankind, would fill the void. Today, Japan is our friend, one of America's greatest allies. Its people ironically developed our tourism economy. Today, the threat to our survival on Guam comes from the Communist Party of China and from North Korea. And you know who America is sending to help us stay free from these threats of slavery and annihilation? Components of the 3rd Marine Expeditionary Force, the successor to the 3rd Marine Division of World War II. The very Marines force that came to liberate Guam on July 21, 1944. They are scheduled to arrive in December 2024, 80 years after their force liberated Guam. Yes, Uncle Sam is coming back to Guam. God bless you, God bless Guam, and God bless the United States Marines, and God bless America. Happy Liberation Day.
Ilinala Ipalawan, Sinyabula, Minaletnya, Agan Bravo, Itatataonya.
Yet cervical cancer continues to pose a constant risk to women today due to low awareness.
Cervical cancer pasiye masek lan matan sa kontilokinyaki. Fingom somono, pap smear, and HPV vaccination isa na kashing tilokinya.
Dapat ko radil amla mugar. Ego mga laklangan radil. Nagtamarera rin mo raw usong ala. Yang raw guru la. Ramak nitalakta. Rektel umaralir.
Ang mga babaeng may edad 21 pataas ay kailangang magpabaptist kada 3 taon.
Sa dati na sontatua, lari sa kwano, anana na token sila ng HPV.
Ewo fesin, todo Guam Foundation. Ato geriawak na test, may oposud, ewo semuel HPV. Eri fefire sa rifirifit, iya patufit singeriare pagi. Ekari ni sa kao, dari tentu burut, nanabut, may patsakurel fefil medicine. Kirisam.
Tampakatilin cervical cancer arangan prevent na from notification moving yal mahabiun kotafulaika cervical cancer.
Ara komin matan fokokos.
Be a well woman.
Mga pakla ba dingiw?
Tufno kada pinipin ang raiwege da health rodat.
Piata li kailan na.
Dangin Meggat, Itatataonya.
Maging malusog po tayong mga kababaihan.
Kitsvefi si puede petiveteresi Torres sawal yeririsits puede papatsakut.
Take the first step to becoming a well woman and call Todu Guam Clinic today at 671-649-TODU to schedule an appointment.